Today I would like to have a look at the problem many people have with Genesis chapter 1, which details the creation of the earth and the universe, and the particular problem is the word day, and that many have come to believe that God created the heavens and the earth in 1 week or 6 literal days plus a day of rest. We would just want to have a look and see if that's exactly what it is saying. That's what it's been translated into English, but is that what it says in the original language of Hebrew? So I just read something from Genesis chapter 1 to start with, and that's in verse 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Now those two words day in that one verse both come from the same Hebrew word, which I believe is pronounced yom, Y-O-M-E. It's Y-O-W-M is the Hebrew spelling, but the pronunciation is yome, so we'll try and stick with that. So it says here that it was in one day, and when we think of that, obviously it's talking about 12 hours, because it talks about the light and the darkness. 12 hours of light, 12 hours of darkness. I'm not sure if anybody really believes God rested 12 hours after each 12 hours before he did the next 12 hours. But many people say, but it literally says day. Well, if you want to be totally literal, then it's talking about just the first 12 hours of a 24-hour cycle. So the Hebrew word in Strong's Concordance, you can look it up yourself, is number 3117, yome or yom. Now we'll go through the various translations of that Hebrew word into English in the Old Testament in particular, which was written in Hebrew. So the number one meaning, believe it or not, it means hot. That's number one. It means hot. That word yom means hot. Meaning, of course, the hot or the daylight hours of a 24-hour day. So it talks about the evening and the morning. Now, as you know, the evening and the morning would be a 12-hour day. If it was going to be a 24-hour day, it would be evening to evening or morning to morning. But it just says the evening and the morning, meaning a beginning and an end. And that would be, as I said, for those who want to be totally literal, you're talking only 12 hours. So from sunset to sunset would be, of course, 24 hours, sunset to sunset. A great example of that is the Old Testament Sabbath, or the Shabbat, as it's called now. And that, of course, was from Friday evening to Saturday evening, which it still is to this day. So there's a 24-hour sunset to sunset. But we're going to see here that it can be translated into other periods of time. Number one we'll look at is translated the same Hebrew word into year. So in Exodus chapter 13 verse 10 is an example. Thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance, which was a reference to the Passover, remembering the Exodus, in his season from year, yom, to year, yom. Well, you could see straight away you couldn't put in the word day, because it really does clarify why they put year, because we know that the Passover was only once a year. So the translators here put in the word year correctly. There's some others, if you'd like to look at them, and I'll read them out. In Leviticus chapter 25 verse 29, Numbers chapter 9 and verse 22, and there's more, where this same Hebrew word that was translated day in Genesis 1 is now translated year. What about age? In Genesis 47 verse 28, there's a verse that says, and Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. Certainly a lot longer than a day. So So here's an example where it was translated, same word, not day, not year, but age. And there's more references which I'll quote here. Genesis 29 verse 14, Leviticus 25 verse 8, Deuteronomy verse 14. We now, in those particular scriptures, we go to another word, which is space. So it's translated age, and then later it could be translated space. And one of those I just quoted, Leviticus 29 verse 14, at the time of Jacob with Laban, living with Laban, the father of his 2 wives, Laban said to him, "Surely thou art my bone and my flesh," and he abode with him the space of a month. So all of a sudden we see this same word could be a space, it could be a year, it could be an age. Going back to age, which everything indicates would have been a lot better translation for Genesis 1 than the word day. You can look that up in Genesis 18 verse 11, Genesis 21 verse 2, Genesis 21 verse 7, Joshua 23 verse 1. That same word yom translated as age. So what do we have? A 12-hour day, 24-hour day, a year or years. We have age, we have space. All of those words have been translated in the English from one original Hebrew word, yom. So let's have a little look at some other thoughts here. Just turn the page here. So in Genesis chapter 1, yom could have been translated as either, as I've just said, 12 hours, 24 hours, a year or years, age, or even a space. As knowledge has increased in the world of science, geology, archaeology, ancient history, and even in the study of fossils, there is nothing, even slightly, that would direct or channel such study, such knowledge to imagine the earth and the universe to be only 6,000 years old, or roughly that. Because we know that Adam was driven out of the garden in exactly 352 BC, not quite 4,000 BC from Bible chronology, but that's another whole subject. So we'll say 4,000 years BC, 2,000 years plus a bit AD. We're talking around 6,000 years. How long Adam was in the garden, we don't know, but from when he was driven out of the garden, Bible chronology nails it down very accurately to just be a little bit less than 4,000 years. So there's nothing when you would actually, without that, trying to prove that point, there was nothing that would make you think when you studied fossils or archaeology or any of those things, you think, oh, everything indicates 6,000 years ago. No, everything indicates the opposite. The direction only, and I repeat only, comes from a belief that the Bible says that God took 6 literal 24-hour days to create the earth and the universe. That's where that idea comes from. This belief has caused many would-be believers in the Bible, people who would like to believe in God, to doubt the accuracy of the Bible. When they look at that, they think, well, that's wrong straight away. Why do I go any further? I know for a fact, as people possibly say, that the Earth's been around a lot longer than 6,000 years. In the light of such accumulated knowledge, a much more accurate translation to the word yom in Genesis chapter 1 would be age. That would be the number one sensible translation. That God divided his creation of the earth and the universe into 6 separate periods of time from one age to another age, each age having a beginning and an end, hence the evening and the morning. So that would be really, in the light of what I've just gone through, a far more sensible translation and wouldn't cause all this drama of trying to prove the earth is only 6,000 years old. Remember, God rested on the 7th day, by the way. Do people really believe he rested for just 24 hours or it may be 12 hours? Of course not. The day for rest is the same day, and it's gone for a long time. We don't know exactly, but thousands of years, that day of rest, and it continues to do so. So maybe some final points on this matter. Shortly I will do maybe another video, another one something like this, a discussion on these things, about how that chapter 1 and chapter 2 are very different. But because people believe that Adam was the first man, they try to make chapter 2 and chapter 1 the same. But there are huge differences between chapter 1 and chapter 2, and you don't need, a bit like what this trying to prove the earth is only 6,000 years old, the same thing trying to prove that Adam literally was the first man is unnecessary when you understand chapter 1 completely and chapter 2 completely, and you'll find out no good trying to say they're the same. They are not. They're very different. But I should finish off on this particular video on the point that I'm making. So when you read through chapter 1 of Genesis, you don't need to say that is just a 24-hour day. It could be, and most probably could have been more correctly translated, an age, from age to age. I'll make a final point. It seems such a waste of time for Bible believers, particularly Christian scientists, Bible-believing geologists, archaeologists, ancient historians, biblical historians, to waste their time endeavouring to prove a very young age to the universe, when such modern accumulated knowledge shouts to everyone else, this earth and this universe has been around for a very long time. The sky's the limit. Not 6,000 years, but thousands of years. By the way, this does not support evolution, which is another whole subject. It's just the way that God created it. He took 6 separate ages to make those creations right through. By the way, everything that people have studied in the world of science, archaeology, history, whatever, indicates that it's been over a long time. Final part of God's creation was man, not that man evolved from anything that God had already made. But the same order is there, is what I'm saying. There's no different order. The Bible order does not disagree with the findings of science, history, archaeology, the fossils. Everything indicates a long time, and one by one after the other, it all agrees. So it's been around, the universe, everything indicates a lot longer than 6,000 years. Don't waste your time saying, oh, but the Bible says a day. When if you do a little bit of history, by all means do what I've done. Go looking at this interesting Hebrew word for yom. Go looking at how it was translated as year or years, how it was translated as a space, how it was translated as an age. And then you'll see why waste your time. If there's no disagreement, one final comment we've often made as Christians and believers in the Bible, that there's nothing in the Bible that disagrees with the true findings of science. Not talking about their theories like the theory of evolution. I'm talking about the factual things that they've proved, like science should prove things, that there's nothing there that disagrees with the Bible. The Bible and true science, true discovery, true revelation does not have any problems. So there's some food for thought. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.